You owe me a big favor. But you were racing against the guy who called a cop to shoot you. Except that wasn't a real cop. It was one of his guys.
How do you know?
Well, I saw him, and he wasn't wearing any badges. To me, it was an assigned killer to stop you in case of you winning the race.
I knew he was up to something.
Did you know the guy before he attacked your car?
Never in my life.
I see. So what's your life story? I'm listening.
Me and my dad, we used to work at the fuel station, fixing a lot of cars. Don't know much about my mom. My dad never told me. We were very poor, with no home. We had to live in the cold garage that we worked in, over cars. He even worked past midnight. He was a very skilled mechanic. He was making car modifications that were ahead of their time. I knew one day his talent would be known. He got a job offer with a higher salary, and he took it. It's quite far from our home, but he couldn't say no to the offer. He's fixing imported cars that were being shipped here. Although his earnings were great, my dad wasn't so happy. His boss didn't treat him right. One night, when he was working overtime, he saw this one imported car and fell in love with it. With his boss if he could somehow own it, but his boss wanted to play a game. He wanted a drag race against his son. My dad wins, he gets the car, but if he loses, he has to work overtime for a month. My dad, he didn't even think twice. He made his car all-wheel drive, which was almost unknown back then, so I already knew how the race was gonna end. Gotta admit, it was a lot closer than I thought. Then, one night, there were a lot of cops looking for us. I was alone and very scared.
Anyone there? Hello?
Head around front. I'll cover the back.
Still to this day, I think it was all a setup. It happened just a few days after the race. I always felt safe when my dad was driving, but that night, he got shot in the shoulder. I didn't want to leave him, but he insisted, saying he'll be fine. I barely knew how to drive. His last words were, "You got this." I was crying a lot. After that moment, my only goal was to unite with my dad someday. That day probably won't come soon, but I believe somewhere... At least I still have his car. Kinda. Calling.
You need your rescue!